Have you ever wondered about the true nature of our government? We often view it as a noble entity, a protector of justice, preserver of order, and provider of public services. We envision it as a collective representation of our will, a body that works tirelessly for our welfare. But what if I told you that the government is not what it seems? Typically, we think of the government as an institution that controls and manages a nation. It's like the captain of a ship, steering us through turbulent waters, guiding us towards progress and prosperity. But what does this captain actually do? Let's break it down, shall we? Firstly, the government is responsible for making and enforcing laws. It's like the referee in a football match, setting the rules of the game, blowing the whistle when there's a foul, and ensuring fair play. These laws supposedly help maintain order and prevent chaos. Imagine a game without a referee or rules. It wouldn't be a game anymore, would it? It would be a free-for-all, a battle royal, a mad scramble. This is why we need laws and a body to enforce them. Secondly, governments provide public services. These are like the support crew behind a successful sports team, the doctors, physiotherapists, nutritionists, trainers, and so on. They're not in the spotlight, but they're crucial for the team's success. Similarly, public services like healthcare, education, transportation, and utilities are essential for a nation's well-being. They keep the wheels of the country turning, the heart beating, the lights on. Lastly, governments protect their citizens. They are like the goalkeeper in a soccer match, defending the goal, blocking shots, and keeping the enemy at bay. The government protects us from external threats through the military, from internal threats through the police, and from economic threats through financial and economic policies. So the government plays a critical role in our lives. It's the referee, the support crew, and the goalkeeper. It's the backbone of a country, the glue that holds society together, the shield that protects us. But here's a question to ponder. Is this all there is to the government? Or is there more beneath the surface, hidden from our view? Is there more to the government than meets the eye? When we say mafia, what comes to mind? Perhaps you think of a group bound by unwavering loyalty, where one's status is determined by their ability to command respect and wield influence. Or perhaps you envision an organization that profits from various activities, both legal and illegal. The mafia is a fascinating entity. It is an organization with a hierarchical structure, much like a corporation, or dare we say a government. At the top, you have the boss, or capofamiglia, akin to a president or prime minister. Below him, you have the underboss and consigliere, similar to vice presidents or cabinet members. And then there are the soldiers, the foot soldiers, the workforce of the organization, comparable to the civil servants in a government. Now, let's delve deeper into what the mafia does. It's involved in numerous activities, from the illegal, such as drug trafficking and extortion, to the perfectly legal, like owning real estate or businesses. These activities generate revenue, which is then distributed throughout the organization. This might sound eerily familiar. Governments, too, are involved in a wide range of activities. They collect taxes through extortion. They own land and infrastructure paid for by taxes, and they allocate resources among their constituents. They even regulate and control certain activities that could be considered questionable, much like the mafia does. But perhaps the most striking similarity lies in how the mafia maintains control and influence. Through a system of rewards and punishments, the mafia ensures loyalty and obedience. They use fear and coercion to keep their members in line, and they're not above using violence to enforce their rules. Does this not sound akin to the way governments operate? They, too, have a system of rewards and punishments. They use laws to coerce taxation and regulations to maintain order, and they have the power to enforce these laws, sometimes even resorting to force. The truth is that the lines between what we consider legitimate power and illegitimate power are very blurry. And that's where the real intrigue lies. Now, isn't it intriguing to find similarities between a government and a mafia, or is the striking reality too much? The government and mafia, two seemingly disparate entities, have more in common than you think, nearly identical. Before you dismiss this notion as absurd, let's delve into the parallels between the two. Consider this: Both the government and the mafia at their core are organizations that establish and enforce rules within a specific territory. Just as the mafia has its code of conduct, the government has its laws. Both entities demand adherence to these rules, and both wield power to enforce them. Now, you may argue that the government's laws are designed to maintain order and protect citizens, while the mafia's rules are self-serving. However, isn't it true that governments also make laws that serve their interests? And don't mafias also maintain a certain order? Let's move on to the concept of control. Both the government and the mafia maintain control within their respective territories. They use different similar methods. The government might use legislative measures or law enforcement, while the mafia might use orders from the boss, consigliere, underboss, and on down the rankings, for intimidation or violence. But the ultimate goal remains the same: to maintain control, to keep the status quo, to prevent any challenge to their authority. Next, we come to the collection of protection money. The government collects taxes through extortion, which is, in theory, used to provide services and protections for the citizenry. The mafia, similarly, collects protection money, promising businesses safety from harm. Both entities take money from individuals or businesses under their control, promising protection in return. Is taxation really that different from a protection racket when you strip it down to its bare essentials? In reality, it is not. Finally, let's talk about the use of force. Both the government and the mafia are willing to use force when necessary. The government may use its military or police force, while the mafia may use soldiers or associates to resort to violence or intimidation. It's a sobering thought, isn't it? That these two entities, one regarded as the pillar of society and the other as its scourge, can be compared in such a way? It makes sense why the government invested so much in the earlier part of the 20th century to eliminate respective mafias in the US. They were a direct competitor of the extortion racket on the people. In conclusion, drawing parallels between the government and the mafia isn't about demonizing the former or romanticizing the latter. It's about prompting a critical examination of power structures that we often perceive as legitimate. It's about questioning the very nature of authority and control. So it begs the question, is the government just a legal mafia? Let's circle back to the provocative question we posed at the beginning. We've examined and dissected the concept of government and its parallels with what we typically regard as a mafia. We tread on a controversial path, yes, but it's a path that offers a fresh perspective. Both the government and the mafia, as we've seen, wield power and influence. They enforce their rules and regulations, whether it's through legislation or the more sinister code of silence. They both have their territories, their jurisdictions, where their word is law. Further, they both collect their dues. Governments have taxes and mafias have protection money. Both are mandatory, both are enforced, and both are used to fund the operation of the respective system. Then, there's the aspect of control. Both entities maintain their grip on power, often using fear as a tool. Governments have law enforcement and the threat of legal penalties, while mafias use intimidation and the fear of violence. Of course, this comparison is not to demonize governments or glorify mafias. It's simply to shed light on the mechanics of power and control that often go unnoticed or unchallenged. It's to foster a sense of critical thinking, to encourage questioning the status quo, and to promote a deeper understanding of the systems that we allow to govern our lives. Why do we allow ourselves to be ruled? No one has rightful power over another. So to use a democratic process to outsource power to be forced onto everyone is immoral, illegitimate, and evil. So next time you think about the government, remember, it is a mafia member in a suit and tie.